Chapter 3. Meet the Familiar. "We promised! Looks like you're getting a kitty cat," Shauna teases, already starting her victory dance. I turn back to face the attendant, trying to ignore her jibes and just be polite. "Could I see the cat? I believe that I will be taking him home today." The attendant looks a little flustered, but leads us a bit further back. Looking at these sorry sights, it's hard to see the promise of a familiar who will be able to get through this semester. I need one that will be able to handle the strain of the conjuring classes that I've signed up for. One that will be a good assistant. One that will work well with me. Right now, I hardly see any that can handle the strain of standing upright. These are nothing like the pets at Cassoc's shop. I can see no circumstances that would lead them to take on a relationship with that amount of trust. Though it does make the thought cross my mind. How did Cassoc manage to get his pets the way they are? Did he seek out those interested in the bondage and toys that he sold? Or did he just luck out that the ones he bought happened to like bondage and were okay with long periods of it in public? Either way, it is exceedingly clear that these familiars are not of the same caliber. These familiars are terrified, fractured creatures, though with what the handler said, I can see why. These are the creatures with many, many previous owners, passed along until they end up here, where one last ounce of usefulness is to be squeezed out of them. By the looks of it, they know it as well. They know where they are in the market. They know this is their last chance. The handler deftly directs us through the winding path of the cages, passing some hopeful faces and some who hide when they see us coming. Eventually, we stop in front of a small cage at the end of a walkway, right before the back walls. The handler smiles at me coyly and nods me closer. "All right, here it is. You can go ahead and take a look and make sure this is what you want." Her voice makes it abundantly clear that this is, in fact, not what I want. And her voice is so infuriatingly sure of herself that even without my bet with Shauna, I think I would be obligated to get this familiar, just out of spite. My new familiar is crouched on his hands and knees. He seems startled to be receiving direct attention. His hair is jet black, the only deviation being the small speckling of white at the tips of his pointed ears. His thin, dark tail twists and wraps around his leg as if for protection once it becomes apparent that we are not going to keep moving directly past his cage. His twitching gives way to a low, keening sound, interrupted by small whimpers as he pushes himself further into the corner, his soft ears flattening on his head as he begins to shake. Our attendant gives an annoyed huff just before she raises her fist and pounds on the cage, rattling the entire structure and forcing a high-pitched yelp from the boy. "I know you're stupid, but even that's no excuse for your behavior. Now come and greet your master like a proper pet." The familiar hesitates, seemingly unable to move a muscle, but only for a moment before the attendant's booming voice commands him, "Now!" He whimpers, but quickly scampers on his hands and knees to the wall closest to us, bowing his head so deeply that his dark, matted hair obscures his face. "I'm sorry." A soft, sweet voice trembles. So sorry, Master. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I swear I'm a good—" The attendant clears her throat, making the boy jolt to a stop before straightening up his stance a bit and looking up just enough for me to make out his shaking pink lips, cracked and chapped, and tears trailing down his pale face. "I am 19 years old. My breed is common cat. I am very happy to be of service to you, Master, in any way that you see fit." He bows his head at the end of his seemingly pre-programmed introduction. Though the phrases seem well practiced, it doesn't stop his shoulders from shaking slightly before he returns to his kneeling position. "He's a little slower than your average familiar, but if you keep your reins tight, there won't be any problems. Don't try to be subtle about your punishments either. He needs clear direction if you want results." The handler drawls on as though she's reading through a manual, not talking about a living being right next to her. The boy hunches his shoulders, and his ears plaster themselves against his head as if trying to curl up on himself while maintaining his position. The attendant keeps talking without taking any notice, and I almost convince myself that I haven't seen anything. "I'll go draw up your papers. You both can just wait right here. I'll be right back." "Thank you," Shauna calls after her before turning back to me. "You regretting this yet?" I can't help turning away from her, so I focus on my new familiar. He's still shaking, Ears plastered to his head, tail coiled tightly around his midsection. Now that I'm actually looking, there's quite a bit of bruising along his jaw and the left side of his face. His oversized clothes hang from his small frame, obscuring any other details. I'm not going to enjoy checking him over for injuries once we get home. He isn't the physical mass that Shauna's familiar is. This poor kitty probably couldn't even stand without having his knees quake. I didn't particularly love any part of this day, with all the crazy equipment and rules I'd been learning, and my new familiar is in a pretty sorry state with his matted hair, bruises, and tremors. But who knows? Maybe once this little guy is cleaned up and bandaged, he'll relax a little. Maybe he even knows stuff from another master that he had served and can help me learn the ropes. Maybe we'll end up actually working well together. It's the best I can hope for. But until then... Well, I stutter. This just isn't exactly what I had expected. I'm trying to answer honestly. I hadn't known anything before. Nothing about how these guys lived, were sold, were kept. I had known nothing. For some reason I'd been expecting an actual building, bigger places for the familiars, a much less angry and degrading handler. I shudder as I think of the woman drawing up the paperwork. She's told me nothing about my new acquisition except that he is stupid and probably not worth my time. Nothing personal that I'll need to know if I'm going to be taking another living being into my house. I know nothing about him. This entire situation has spiraled out of control, but I guess I never had a realistic grasp of the situation anyway. I let out an exasperated sigh before pulling out the little bag of treats from my satchel. I did get some stuff for him, though. You know, when I realized that I didn't have anything prepared for my new addition. I quickly fish out a couple of the treats, wincing at the terrible smell. Do you know if they even like these? I ask, feeling a little dejected. I know so little about a creature I'll have to live with for the rest of his life. Huh. I don't think I've ever tried using those. Oh, of course she wouldn't know. Of freaking course, the one person here with experience wouldn't have any knowledge about this subject. Still, I suppose it's worth a try. I kneel in front of the caged figure comfortably and ask, "What's your name?"